Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Micro Solidarity podcast. Today, I'm with Kathrin David, and Kathrin and I had an interview, or we had a chat. Um, I found the date, what was it, 14th of January, a few months ago, about her not a co-living residential community experiment in Andalusia. And today I'm really excited to have a second chat together where we can hear, yeah, how did it go? And what did you learn? So that we've got the before and the after picture. I really enjoyed that conversation before, not only because I was in the nice sunshine in Spain myself at the time, but also it just was really great to have a sense of companionship with you because actually it was just at the beginning of the incubator, which I was hosting with Lauren, Ananta, and Nikki in Andalusia as well. And so, yeah, we had an interesting chat about our leadership edges and what we might expect to come across and our intentions. Um, Maybe if you want to hear about the whole like intro to the Not a Co-Living experiment and what it is, people could probably watch our first interview, which I'll put a link to below. But today I imagine we could look at like the after snapshot and do a bit of a retrospective together. Um, yeah, so thanks, Kathrin, for taking the time to have another conversation. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. I'm super happy to be here, and it feels like a full circle moment. I mean, we talked
Mm.
before, we met in Andalusia, and now we can sort of like look back. So I'm very excited.
Hmm. Yeah, that was a real gem, actually. You guys actually visited us. How many you were? Four of you? Yeah, came to visit, four or five.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I think four of us, yeah.
four, yeah, came to visit us and had dinner at our place, and we already had a bit of a conversation there, so we can also touch on some of those topics. Cool. Um, yeah. Do you want to give like a very brief summary though for people who haven't watched the other interview, just to orient us to like what was not the Not a Co-Living experiment
Mhm.
about?
Yeah, sure. So the idea of the auto co-living experiment is basically, or was basically, to actually explore community living. So this grew out of an idea of a group. We started having conversations at least, I think, 2 years ago, wanting to somehow explore how do we want to live in the future. And one need was the idea to actually rent a house, have a space, and actually test a few things. And then my partner and I took this upon ourselves and organized it, thought about the intention, put out the invitation, and rented this house in Andalusia. And in the end, we were seven of us. And it was super nice. It was a little bit rural, I would say, but still quite close to Ronda. We were very much in between the mountains. And the idea was to, yeah, like I said, have bring specific ideas for the way of like how we can explore community living, but then also actually to experience it. So yeah, we're going to talk about, I think, also the hosting part, but in general, the idea was to have some frameworks of um, how to be together, I guess, like the daily things and rhythms, but then also to have some specific time and formats to actually tackle this topic and have some learnings for ourselves and as a group.
Awesome. Yeah, lovely bite-sized summary there. Yeah, and it was one month in, so one
Ah,
month near
yes.
Ronda in Andalusia. Yeah. Yeah. And now that you've completed that experience, given that all the intention with which you set out with, um, how did it match your expectations? Did it surprise you in some way, in a general sense? Do you feel you kind of ended up doing that, or was there, um, yeah, did you have many surprises about what it ended up being?
Mm. I think in general, it was definitely, let's say, close to what I hoped for and what I expected. And I learned a lot. And I think we all learned a lot. And especially, I mean, I can talk for myself. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about, let's say, myself in these kind of spaces. And also because I had this curiosity of how do I like to be in this sort of hosting role? How do I feel about it? What's like my own personal learnings? But then also for the topic. Um, and it was really, really nice that most of us, we really stayed for this 1 month period. Two persons of the seven of us needed to leave a little earlier. So it was really nice to have this container, really. And yeah, even also some small things about being in this region, which I really loved. It was so green, and the town Montecorto it was called was so super cute. We had like many sheeps and goats as neighbors, and they were like small things that were like really positively super surprising. And we made a lot of memories. Still feeling about like the learnings, but also I think the memories as a group. So yeah, definitely a big success, I guess. Yeah.
Awesome. There's many drawers there that we could open, like your personal
Mhm.
journey, which maybe we can start off with that, like how it was for you. But I'm also curious about how the venue impacted your experience there, and yeah, the groups, like the memory making, and like what were the things that stood out as like highlights of like what were the bits that stayed with you all, yeah, and people's experiences, yeah. But maybe yeah, let's start with your journey. I'm always curious about how when we take on uh, like some kind of hosting experiment project like this, how it stretches us, because you can plan things and like sort of have some degree of like control over about what you're going to create, but it's always going to stretch you in ways that you don't expect. And we talked a bit about that at the beginning. I remember you said you reminded me just now that one of your questions was, how do I like this role? And how do I
Mhm.
like it, like hosting and holding space with my partner. So yeah, I'm curious, like how much of it do you feel was in your stretch zone, and were there specific moments or aspects that pushed you further out of your comfort zone than usual? Yeah, how was that for you?
Mm. So I think one thing that comes up in the very beginning is for sure the part of responsibility, because I think also I mentioned it before, and I also then specifically took it to the group because I thought about like my general how do you say pattern of taking on responsibility quite a lot. And that's also why I thought, okay, I need to voice it in the beginning to also bring clarity about my role, because um, we, all of us, also us as the host, paid the same amount for the venue. So we
Mm,
shared all the cost evenly. And we still, I think also was a nice conversation when we met you. There's still this, let's say, power there because we created it, we put the invitation out, and we also were there a few days earlier to arrange the space and thought about some structures as well.
mm,
And I really, like the personal part is, I really loved bringing these ideas, bringing these structures, thinking about what might help us to follow this intention of exploring community living was super, super nice. And especially also to then realize that these structures and ideas also helped me to share this responsibility. I think one part was voicing it. I mean, beforehand while talking to everyone, but also 1 week before we met, we put up an online call where we all had like a short get together,
mm,
get to know each other, talking about like some logistics, but also just like have a few, like a first feeling for the group.
mm,
And that's also why I mentioned it again, like our role and what we all might expect. So this was really helpful. And this also really brought a lot of, even as I remember after a few days already, a lot of ease and joy of like seeing, okay, the things are being taken by the group as well. Like, for
mm,
example, the community master report, for example, and also the putting up tasks and everyone, I saw everyone taking ownership of the process and also of the house. So like people were fixing doors because they didn't want them to be too noisy, or like arranging their personal workspace somewhere. So it was really nice. And also people came up with ideas of like, hey, I would like to have local X, and I talked to this and this person, and I would like to like organize it. So yeah, it was really nice. So everybody could really, yeah, join.
mm,
So this is one part that I really liked and was one
mm,
question beforehand, so it was
mm.
good to talk about it. Mm.
Yeah, also when you're saying this, I'm like, yeah, what a relief, hey, when people feel they can like figure out the I want more local eggs thing on their own, that they're not coming to you as the responsible person for all these micro things, but also
Mm-hmm.
feeling agency to, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose that's, context specific. Like for a month long, you don't want to. It would be quite tiring to be receiving like questions and being responsible for all those things. So sounds
Mm-hmm.
like that worked quite well. Were there moments where you felt that you actually did want to take responsibility for something that people were um, sort of taking their own initiative from, and you felt like, oh, actually, it would have been better if um, if I had taken responsibility piece for that thing, or were
Mm.
you, where you were unsure, yeah.
Mm. Very good question. I don't think there was anything where I was like, oh, what's happening? I would have liked this to be different, like wanting to intervene. I think I can't remember this was happening.
Mm,
It was just very interesting because we thought beforehand, okay, let's have Wednesdays and Sundays check-in. Like we facilitated like an emotional check-in, let's say. How do we feel in the group and how do we feel in the space and in general, like in our week, let's say. And these kind of things, and also like proposing, for example, the community mastery board. These were
mm,
things where I was like, I don't know how they like it and how they take it. But yes, they
mhm,
like we, I guess, took it and used it a lot. So it was more like the thought beforehand of, okay, how will things that I would like to adapt or like experience, how will they respond, I guess.
mhm,
But I don't think there was anything. There were a few, I mean, it's also connected to the learnings, I guess, a few things where I
mm,
thought afterwards I would have liked to do things differently. But this is
mhm,
nothing where there was a reaction to someone, I guess. Yeah.
mm.
Mm.
Yeah. What kind of things were they? If you want to expand on that a bit, yeah, it
Yeah.
sounds like there's some
Yeah, definitely.
interesting learning there. Yeah.
One thing was because I already said this idea of like exploring the topic a little bit deeper and really make space for community living as a topic. And what I didn't really realize, I think I felt it after like a week or two, but like one or two people in the group only said it quite late, let's say. We made these sessions mostly in the evenings, like the check-ins, but also some like, let's say, smorgasbord
Mm,
conversations, for example, also after dinner. And then I thought, and also someone voiced it and said, hey, I really struggle having a lot of energy and brain power in the evening, and it would have been helpful to have it earlier. So that's why it's definitely one big thing to think like, okay, we could have done this in like a lunch break situation or like
mm,
reserve a half morning on the weekend, for example, to specifically dive deeper. Um, I think, I mean, looking back for this experiment, it was nice because we were very excited about the area. We did lots of hikes. We had like a local asparagus festival in the super cute town nearby, like many random things. So I also feel like if we would have taken like a whole day on the weekend, specifically only to sit down, let's say, and work on stuff, I don't know, but generally just
mm,
to change, really think about, okay, if you have this intention, what's the best way to make space for it? And also like logistically, what's the best way to approach it? This is definitely one thing I would think more about and then probably change it as well.
mm, mm. That's cool. Yeah, like it's interesting both in like the balance of like letting people have like free time and doing it and like exploring and letting things emerge, and then being like, wait, there is also a reason why we're doing this, and let's make sure we
Hmm.
don't forget that, and make sure we actually plan time in for it. Yeah. Um, was there something that would have made it like easier for you, or like a kind of even like a hosting skill, or a sense of like an inner capacity that you think you could grow into to make it easier for you to be like, okay, actually I want to have more of this like exploration of, we're here for exploring community and what it means to us together. What is there something that would have made it easier for you?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Very good question. I feel like now I have the awareness, like looking back, I'm like, okay, now I know. But
Yeah.
beforehand, skill-wise, I guess maybe it comes down also to what we talked about when we met. For me, like the most important learning and constant thinking process I thought about is this balance about individual needs and collective needs, because I
Mm,
really feel like that's also one struggle of mine, where I mean, I guess we all have to some extent the need to be liked and to be accepted by someone. So I also really like to try to accommodate to everyone, let's say, which sometimes doesn't really help. And
mm,
sometimes when we had meetings, it took a little longer in the evening, for example, because we had some like many ideas on what to do. Let's say, like on a Sunday, we were planning the week ahead, and then I could sense if someone was a little bit more impatient, which were then also okay because we talked afterwards, and it was really really good to like balance it. But at the same time, because also we talked about it, what do you do? And I still remember when you said like to make the collective needs visible as well, to not just think
mm,
about, okay, oh no, this person doesn't like the community mastery board process. Shit, like what do I do? No, but maybe it's helping everybody else. So also to make visible what's working. This is like a
mm.
really big learning to really tune in, I guess, to both of these layers and both of these, yeah, perspectives.
Yeah, I hear a lot of resonance there. Yeah, that's for me also really a big one at the incubator as well of like what happens when like one person doesn't like the thing. Like I could have the similar thing, oh, I want everyone to be happy. And a tendency to like, go along with the person who complains about something or who doesn't like it or is like upset by something going a certain way. um, as of centering the one outlying person's needs, which I think I'm definitely not saying like that their needs should be pushed away, but like to bring their needs in and also reflect the needs of everyone for who it's working well with, and say how can it be, someone just said this really great quote, it's like how can it be rather than us against them, like us against the problem. So to frame it like that, like, oh, okay, so it's not working for you, it is kind of working for us, but how do we address the problem, like make it better, like together.
Mhm.
Yeah, it could, although I also notice in the group it can be easily happen, it's not just me getting frustrated about the one person who doesn't like the way things are going, but everyone else who is liking it can get
Mm,
frustrated if they have to keep changing something that for them is like really precious, and they really
mm,
enjoy, and it can easily
mhm,
become them feeling like a sense of resistance against this person. Yeah,
mm.
yeah,
Yeah, definitely. I think before, and we were also wondering, because I think one part is also this also connected to the mastery board, I guess. How comfortable is everyone with voicing needs and
yeah.
voicing what's working and what's not working? This is also very interesting and one thing because also later we, of course, also talked about the community mastery board and how they liked it. And before I also so we didn't look at it every day. We actually really only looked at it twice a week, let's say.
Mm,
Although I also always said if there are things, more post-it notes visible, I would have also voiced it like in a more informal way after the dinner or during dinner, even. So we did it not super regularly, which I think was okay because there was also this need expressed to not every day have these kind of conversations or like to
mm,
focus really on this board like every day. So it was a test. And at the same time, I think I'm super curious to hear what you're gonna say about this. Yeah, not everybody was comfortable putting things, let's say, tensions on the board
mm,
because I thought like, oh, maybe these are tiny things. I don't want to put something where it would be, let's say, against one person and it's like very passive aggressive or it's like a tiny thing which doesn't really bother me that much. So I think
mm,
some had tendency to, let's say, wait more and maybe it came up in a different way, more in a
mm.
conversation even. Um, so yeah, and I think I took away, I guess there's not one way to bring up tensions. I think it still
Yeah,
helped in a way of like, there is this thing, you can use it, you don't have to, but you can. Um, but of course, there's also this part of like personal capacity of being comfortable with doing it. But
mm,
yeah, these are like many. many thought
Yeah.
things passages, but what do you think about it?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and I'm really glad this comes up because we I think we came up against a similar thing of, well, one thing we also experienced, oh gosh, it's a bit exhausting to do the whole community mastery board every evening after dinner. So we actually ended up doing it only 3 days a week. And on the other days we just did the Kanban board, which is like what are the tasks for the next day? Who's cooking, who's cleaning, who's picking people up, and who's doing grocery shopping, that kind of thing. But the tensions and awarenesses of the community mastery board, we did 3 days a week. Um, and we had so we kind of used the framework of the community mastery board on a meta level of like, how is it going, our use of the community mastery board? Okay, we have a tension that it's too much time in the week. Okay, let's try this out. And 3 days a week felt good. Another tension was that, very just like you, like some people realized, oh, I have a small tension. I didn't want to do a whole process around putting it on the board with a test, and then is it go to mastery, and it takes even longer. So we created space after the community mastery board for tenchinos. Um, so like small tensions, which are more just a little announcement, that they're not like about that, they're like things that are not don't need to go on the board as we need to change our cultural habit of how we do things. It's just like, hey, a little reminder about this thing, or I've just fixed this, or I've just changed the way this goes, something like that. It doesn't need a big tweak or a cultural shift in how we use the space. And then we had also announcements. So if people wanted to announce that it's something they wanted to do the next day or so.
Mm-hmm.
That helped people who had smaller things that they felt were too small to go on the board to still feel welcome to share something. And I really agree with you that I think it should be really there should be really more than one place for people to express tensions. If people find it difficult to like share something in this group where, like after dinner everyone's there, maybe it's something more personal. I don't think that really, it's unlikely that something deeply personal belongs on the community mastery board anyway. And maybe that's the tension in itself, right? That, oh, we struggle, there's some like interpersonal tensions that we don't feel comfortable sharing them in this space. Then okay, what's a test? Okay, maybe we set up like a little tension resolving time, or maybe we need more, like as you said, like emotional interpersonal check-ins. And we realized we missed a bit of, it wasn't like we had interpersonal tensions, but we had like interpersonal void, and someone said, oh, let's have a bit more time for deep shares. So we started doing like an after dinner, after the community mastery board, anybody who wanted to could come and sit by the fire and share some celebrations about their day or something that's been going on for them. And that was like actually a significant like positive development in our group, like in our group um, field of warmth. So yeah, setting up multiple ways for tensions to be addressed. I think that's super wise. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think, yeah, then it makes it also easier for everyone to find their pathway of expressing, I guess. And
Mm-hmm.
interesting that you're putting up this thing of like more interpersonal connections, because this also came up a little bit, I think, in the beginning. So most of those in the group knew each other, but not everyone. There were a few that were less experienced, let's say, with community living. And yeah, so there were different levels of connections. And in the beginning, we also tried to then facilitate a little bit of like, yeah, small things of how do you call this again? Like putting different extremes in the room, and you have to position yourself, like where do you stand situation, to have some small things of like having a quick get to know each other. But afterwards, also someone said we could have also done like more super short speed dating one-on-one situations to have these kind of check-ins, because I think the group ones are really, really interesting and really valid and important for us, because it really gave a good group feeling and also a way of like sensing ourselves. How do we feel? What's going on? But then I really agree with like this one-on-one situation or like small group situation. It helps a lot also with these kind of topics.
Totally. Yeah. In the past, I would have seen that, I would have like heard the group saying, oh, we want more of this, or there's not enough connection. And I would have gone like, oh no, I did a bad job of planning this. I should have put more structures in for connection. but actually something I really valued about actually learning it by hearing these tensions was I could actually, one, I think people felt for themselves the longing for it. So it wasn't just me imposing like, we're going to do some
Mm.
connection exercises now, and then be like, okay, I'll come along if I have to. But people, I could relax into it. People actually really
Mm.
long for this and value it, and they're coming because it makes sense. It's attuned to what the group needs and really needs in
Mm.
the moment. So yeah, one of my big celebrations was practicing really minimal viable structures, like creating
Mm.
space for those tensions to be expressed and for the group to co-sense its way into discovering what it really means to feel good together. It sounds like that happened to a degree with you guys as well, like using the board and yeah, discovering, oh, we need more of that or less of that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think it's super, super nice. It's a good way of putting it, because if you put too much structures and ideas and things beforehand, you might limit also what might come up. And if you don't put enough, it might get lost, or the group might get
Hmm.
lost in a way of like wanting to find its way, be together. So yeah, it's a balancing act. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It makes me ask myself and you the question of what makes us feel confident in putting less in and then letting the group co-sense and inviting co-creation. I wonder if there's anything
Mm.
more you want to say about that, like how your leadership style and confidence evolved, and yeah, particularly between like balancing defining the space and saying this is what it is, and like inviting co-creation and emergence. Yeah, was there anything more you like learned or noticed in during that month for yourself?
Mm. Oof, I think, I mean, my working theory going in was okay. I think what helps the most is to go in and propose things, because then there's a starting point. People can react, and they also can feel
Hmm.
like, oh, I like it, or oh, I don't like it. Um, so I think this is what helped in the beginning of suggesting the 2 times check-ins and suggesting the shared dinners every day, and
Hmm.
also the mastery board. And then I guess, I don't know, I guess one way would be then also really emphasizing a lot of time, hey, how, what are things that are missing here, or that you want to propose, for example?
Hmm.
Or like really inviting opinions, really inviting others to share. Um, I guess one thing, what I think also you guys did was like switching facilitation, for example, so that always someone else is speaking. So it's not only 1 or 2 people always coming and proposing things.
Hmm.
And then I guess it's also the way of like, of course, if people are coming with ideas, how do you react? Like, do you actually
Yeah.
take it serious? Do you actually respond and sit together and actually try things that are coming from the others? So I guess it's a way of like having room for co-creation from others, and then also really living it, like really actually responding to it, and not just saying, yes, I want co-creation, but in the end,
Mm.
you really boil it down and really block it. So
Mm.
yeah, that's what's coming up for me.
Mm. I like how you phrase that. Like, how do you react when someone comes with an idea like that? That's really where it shows how really how are you holding your invitation to co-create? Yeah,
Hmm.
and I guess that doesn't mean that you like just because you invited co-creation doesn't mean that when someone comes with an idea you say yes to every single thing. That's
Hmm.
like there was a really great in an interview between Rich and Loz or Lauren the other day, who was also a co-host of the incubator, and they talked about boundary leadership, which means that sometimes you might say no, or but find another way for that person to yeah to feel seen and cared for with their idea. um, yeah, it's like a no but. In the improv they use like the yes and
Hmm.
like principle, like that to build on each other's ideas, and I noticed as a facilitator that I also discovered the value of the no but. It helps me to feel like I can care for the vision of what I'm like inviting into the space as a facilitator. Like I want this
Hmm.
to be about community building or community learning or experimenting with this. Um, but I can also, and so if someone if it doesn't fit with that, I can say no, but also not be like I wouldn't want to. I don't like the idea of people feeling. I try to not let people feel dropped or like ignored with their enthusiasm. I think enthusiasm is so important, but where does that enthusiasm fit? Can I help? This is what I want to learn to do better, is to develop this capacity to channel people's enthusiasm in a way that they can, to help them tune in with what does the whole group feel, what's going on in the whole group field, and how does your enthusiasm attune and align with that, so that your enthusiasm can really amplify the group field rather than it being something that sort of distorts. Like, yeah, not sure if I expressed that exactly clear, but like, yeah, bringing like individual and collective needs together to be the mediator between someone's individual enthusiasm or needs and what else is going on in the group. Yeah.
Yeah, this is
I
so
absolutely.
interesting. I think it's such an important topic, I think, for any group, because I also, even because I talk to many others who are like in, let's say, more permanent structures. And then
Yeah.
what always comes up is like decision making and how do we create this group and things. And on the one hand, people are like, oh, exactly what you said. We want to like harness motivation, and people who come in should have the space to bring things, should have the space to be very easily available to like bring the energy, and so everyone is moved. But then also, of course, how do you protect the group as well? Like, how do you protect what the group is about, the intention and the values and the shared question, I guess. So I think it's I don't know, it's super interesting. I think it's really what you said also, to feel it out somehow. There's a balance again, which I think
Yeah.
is very, very interesting. Again, connected to like individual and collective needs. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Well, another important like awareness comes up for me as well in navigating that is, there's often like when you're hosting, there's quite an invisible architecture that you've created, and it might even be how you've organized the furniture. Because I'm just thinking of an example of a no but that I experienced, and one where someone said, "Oh, how about we change the furniture in the living room and do this, and then we can put like a huge cuddle puddle in the middle." And I assumed they meant like permanently, and um I didn't have like a no to a cuddle puddle, but I did have a no to changing the whole living room. And I think in that moment, I got triggered. I was like, oh, you're not. I think it was because I was feeling um, like frustration, or I had a judgment. Oh, this person doesn't see the effort that's gone into this, like the way the room has been designed by Ananta, my co-host, that she's just like put a lot of effort in. But I didn't recognize that. I didn't have the capacity in that moment to explain like that's something I want to care for. And instead I was just got triggered like, no, I don't like your idea, or like you don't care. And I think there's something I learned that I want to develop is being good at explaining why something's been set up like this, and invite their, okay, wish for a cuddle puddle. Okay, what's that like? I think I take it for granted how much invisible architecture I've put into a thing, and then get annoyed. I can get annoyed or upset when people don't see that and want to override it. And I need to acknowledge that I maybe sometimes need to express why I've done something and why it's like the way it is. And that actually helps me be more flexible. And it also helps people to see, okay, that makes sense, and then we can work together, rather than me against them. So yeah,
Yeah,
that
makes a lot of
was
sense.
interesting. Yeah,
Because you're
yeah,
channeling again their enthusiasm, but you're also being awareness for your position and what you thought about, like how is it and why is it this way? And then again, people can connect to it, because if they don't know,
yeah,
because maybe you just come in a space, you don't really know what's going on, but then they can connect. Maybe they can build on what you're saying even.
yeah, yeah, totally. Hmm. Okay. Let's see. What else is there? I'm curious if there's any like we've been talking a lot about your personal growth and experiences, and I shared a bit of mine. And I'm curious if you received any feedback from participants that like surprised you or moved you. Like how was the guest experience? Yeah,
Mm.
anything you want to say about that?
Yeah. Um, I was very moved by the feedback and what we all talked about. We did let me think about it. We did like one, let's say, big or main retro, or like thinking about our learnings in the last week. And also one person that had to leave earlier, she joined even online. So we put her in the circle on the laptop. And then we went through like our personal learnings, but also our learnings on the topic. And in general, how we liked it and things we would like to have been different. I think one thing that comes up immediately is that many of us in the group felt very this aspect of mutual support a lot. So there were things of like, hey, I did a few things this month I wouldn't have been able to do if I wouldn't not have been here. And with all of you around me, I felt very supported and I was able to tackle some really hard things. And yeah, and also, there was also a lot of talk about being able to actually learn to be in a group, to be more comfortable, because it was like a really, let's say, a conscious process of group sensing and working ourselves out as a group. Because normally, even when you go to a co-living, there's a structure, there's a group, you get thrown in, and then you sort of have to navigate yourself. And so there was this like reflection of, hey, actually, now I feel like if I'm going to the next group, I have a feeling about myself, what I need, and I have a feeling about also how can I navigate these kind of groups and what's important to me. So this was also really cool. Um, and also there were a lot of, let's say, personal learnings in a way of like, okay, being this one month here, having the accessibility to going to the mountains and to the forest is super important. I need this. I need to change things long term in my life to be able to have it. And also, yeah, these were like some things.
It
Yeah, and
sounds
then
like
also
people
we.
really
There you go.
just captured. Yeah, it touches me how like this seems like the social context and the environmental context had like a significant impact. Yeah, I'd be curious about also like the venue and the environmental context, but
Mm,
yeah, this thing around mutual support stands out to me a lot. Yeah, like what gets like catalyzed in us and empowered in us when we can be in a group where we can feel into our own needs and feel
mm,
that the collective is good for us. Like that's excited to get the sense that what we experienced at the incubator is also what you managed to do
mm,
in your experiment. Yeah, this
mm.
individual collective needs theme comes back around again. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's so
Mm.
interesting because I also thought about because someone said, oh, it's also the time. And so we have this 1 month, we are focusing on
Yeah.
it. So you just being together, having this time helps us have this mutual support. But I also think that again, some structures help supporting this because if you have this emotional connection, if you have this space specifically during the week to voice things that you struggle with or like voice things that are on your mind so people can actually connect to it and there's an easy way of expressing it
Mm.
and yeah, so that was really interesting also to witness.
Mm.
um, and then for the venue, so it was a very, let's say, like old Spanish farmhouse.
Mm.
And it was in Montecorto, and it was like, let's say, only 3 minutes walk to the village. And the village was quite tiny, but very cute. I think we looked it up. 300, 400 people are living there, so quite
Mm.
small. Um, but then we were also up on a hill a little bit, like outside of the town, so we could literally look at the village, at sheep and goats, and the mountains. And also, I think a big part was also that literally next, there was only two other houses next to ours, which were our neighbors, and they were also helping. Let's say they were helping the management of the venue.
Mm.
And they only, of course, only spoke Spanish. So, and they were living in this town, I think, for a very long time. So they had like lots of connections. They were very happy to chat. They had two dogs. So there was, I think there was this immediate local connection, let's say, like
Mm.
literally the neighbors. Um, And then we also had a garden around, a pool we couldn't use because I only used it in summer, but it was
Mm.
still the sense of like having a sheltered small garden where you could go to also, let's say, be alone. If you don't want to be in the house with everyone, you could also go. Um, yes, what else? We had only a kitchen that was not super big, but it was big enough. A big living room where we worked, but also were socially together.
Mhm.
And we had, I think it was 5 rooms. And then we shared and switched all of us in these rooms. We didn't one in the beginning was really funny. We didn't have a dishwasher, for example, also.
Mm.
And we also had 2 days they were like having problems with the water pump. So we had to figure out living without water and we could only go down, switch on the pump. And there were like small things that was like it's so funny. We had to like figure out as a group how do we get to solve this water problem and these kind of
Mm.
things. I think it was also really interesting to manage the house together. Yes, that's also
Mm.
what I thought about. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, these like crises can actually bring people together that you have to come together to fix out a real problem that affects everybody. Yeah. I had that happen once when I was hosting a residency in France in a very old house, and the water supply stopped for 3 days, except for one tap. And the amount of like ingenuity that came out of like how to help people, and there were some people who weren't able to like carry things because of injuries, and how do we support them, and it was just very beautiful to see actually. Even though it's
Hmm.
challenging, it does bring some. Wow. Okay. Cool. It also makes me wonder because I think I know at the incubator the venue was so profoundly impactful in the in how successful it was. I think what you said about being able to find a little nook and being alone together, like being able to
Mm.
find your own space, while also there being cozy, large enough communal spaces that are like adaptable. That you use your living room for like hanging out and work. And I wonder, though, I do wonder like what would be like an ideal co-living
Mm.
experiment space. Like, so I also want to ask you like what were some of the challenges of the space? Was there anything that was like difficult and you would have liked to have differently?
Mm. Yeah, I think definitely you definitely would have been better to have even more communal space, I think, because some rooms also had a small table and at least one person, I think, also worked a little bit from their room. Um, and then we also people got creative in figuring out, okay, where do I take my call? Where's internet also still okay to take calls, but not because we kept the living room as a quiet or that's more like a working space during the day. So people were like, okay, where do I go to take calls?
Mm,
Oh yeah, and then we also because we had one person had a little bit of a bigger room, good internet, and didn't use it. So we're like, okay, let's take your room as a call room during the day. And he was like, yeah, totally. Let's do it. So I guess we were creative, but definitely to because I also saw your venues, you had lots of space you could dedicate to, let's say, focused space, small tiny corner, putting cushions, and it's like a real refuge for someone, or like a cozy space, or like a fireplace. I don't know. So I think
mm,
mm, I love the venue, but at the same time, that would have been nice to have more shared space that you could dedicate to certain purposes, for sure.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, I guess I think it's beautiful seeing the creativity. I noticed that as well in the incubator where we didn't have enough rooms for people to have private calls, and we had the system where if someone needed a call space, they would say like ideally the day before, I have a call 3 to 4, can I use someone's room? And generally it worked out, but it does rely on people's willingness to be flexible. I guess
Mhm.
nowadays so many people, especially people who manage to come to these kind of events, they generally are more like digital workers and they have online calls. Yeah, their work is mostly online. So I guess that I know that's an important consideration
Mhm.
about making sure there's enough space for people to have their work calls and meetings.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Anything else about the
Or
venue?
the space? Mm, no, I don't think so. No, because I mean, the also what you're mentioning, internet is always important, but we were managing it quite well. Yeah, no, I think because all other things were like a big plus, like all the balconies we had, and also I feel like we could also sit outside sometimes, using like the outdoor table for work or for just being outside, but depending on the weather again. We had lots of luck, I think, in February with weather. But still, I think if you are even more into spring, even it would have shifted in the space that you could have used also more. There was like a very huge balcony. So maybe this would have also changed the situation a little bit. But yeah, we also got creative because I think, yeah, again, the garden, one person was like, I want to sit outside by the pool in the garden to be able to work. And they were like figuring out things to be able to have some signal down there. So, yeah.
Yeah, cool. Nice. What else? I'm also curious how this is a bit more of an edgy question, maybe. How did you feel about this, like financially, and not necessarily in like, uh, did you make enough money to make it like financially viable, but also in terms of the effort you put in. I'm really inspired by Caleb Tenenbaum from the network. Him and his partner Nina have just put together quite in-depth and really thought through like vision, like financial vision for Community Village, which is their meditation community, really inspired by Mark Solidarity, and put forth a vision there of like community builders being well compensated and seen for the efforts they put in. And I know if it's just an experiment, maybe it's not about that, it's about something else. But how did you feel in terms of the amount of energy you put in to host something like this in service of other people? Yeah. How was the energy exchange, whether financial or appreciation? Yeah.
It's a very good question because I thought about this a lot beforehand. And I think right now, looking back, I feel very comfortable and happy with how we did it. Like sharing the costs and just I felt very much at ease having the setup, going in there with like this very first time kind of experiment, because it took off a lot of pressure, expectations, which I would just have for myself. So it was very, very nice to be able to have this feeling and ease going in. And I was just very grateful to be able to learn so much about myself and to receive so much appreciation and so much feedback from everyone. It was really, really cool. And also because somehow it also got to spark, even outside of the experiment, a lot of conversations and a lot of connections, because I was like, hey, we're doing this and we're sharing about it. And it was really cool to like even have more, it had more implications, I guess, or like more, it created more space to make room for this topic in my life. So this is what I'm really grateful for. I think in general, for sure, I would, if somehow we would like to do it again, I would definitely put this topic up again, saying that I don't know what the outcome would be. But I'm generally also what I can say is we definitely want to somehow do this again. This could be again for a month. It could be also to have this even for a longer time of period in a different kind of setup. Isn't clear yet, but I think after summer probably we would like to do something again. And this is also why I feel like it's very important to think about it, the financial part. Yeah, because I really liked, I think I read also from you, no, your invitation or like your description of the role and things of like, okay, why are we doing these things as we're doing it? Like being very clear, I think is the most important part, so that you are feeling comfortable and that also everybody can connect to it and is aware of like, okay, what can I expect and what is it about? I think that's like what how I would tackle it.
Awesome. I really feel you there on like there's actually doing this kind of thing can be rewarding and you get like compensated in the number of doors it can open in your life to just like learn about yourself. So I'm really glad to hear that you felt that way about this experiment. Like, you definitely you're definitely not going to do a month-long residency without learning something about yourself.
Mhm.
Yeah. And yet the question there, exactly, like if you want to do this again and make it more a part of your life and the thing you do, I guess it can't just remain as like the hobby category. You need to make sure that you're able to, yeah, support yourself. And yeah, and it's yeah, I did find that writing up that document you referred to, you wrote like a incubator model, um, which outlines like all the things we were doing and making really visible all the roles we were taking, like finding, well, we didn't have to find the venue. We were very lucky with that because Rich and Natty found it and they sort of gave us the contact thing. Let's keep this venue in the family.
Mhm.
Take it over next year. Um, but yeah, like making the whole invitation and setting all the budgets and organizing shopping, and I'm thinking of the minimal viable structures, creating the entheos, like the spirit of the thing through our
Mhm.
enthusiasm and vision, um, and all of this and communication. There's something goes into that. Uh, so it's interesting to hear that I find it really cool to hear that you found it helpful to be able to read our
Mhm.
model, and I'd be really curious to see other people do that and really outline like this is the
Mhm.
effort we're going in that's going into this. Um, Partly because it just makes this like money topic that holds a lot of tension sometimes. Like maybe you like
Mhm.
I think it will support making that an easier conversation, and if people can like some people I think opted out of coming to the incubator because they didn't vibe with the financial structure, or that was a tension for them. That's actually why we wrote this thing. And I wonder if that actually contributed to them being like, yeah, I'm not sure if this is quite the space for me. And I'm so glad that they could choose consciously that they didn't want to go into that,
Mhm.
like to put it seriously, economic interaction of like or energetic interaction in that way. Okay. And some people were like, great, that sounds fantastic. Some people didn't even care. They just like, yeah, I want to come. I trust you. um, but it would be so interesting to see that going out more from community organizers, I think, also as a way to make more visible that it's like it can be seen as a real job. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yes, definitely. I think it's super helpful. Just like clarity is just needed for
yeah,
all sides. Yeah.
super helpful. Yeah, nice. And maybe just like to start moving towards the close, you mentioned about the future, in terms of like that you might want to do it again. What's I mean, you've mentioned a little bit in the beginning about skills or capacities that you would want to develop, but um, yeah, is there anything else that you feel you'd want to what kind of would be your next challenge, I'd say, if you're going to do it again for yourself? How would you challenge yourself to grow uh, into the next level of your hosting skills?
Mhm. Super interesting. I haven't thought about it. I guess hmm, what comes up is in general having a longer time, longer than 1 month.
Hmm.
Actually, I think it even came also from the group. They would have liked to have even more time together. And I feel like it's interesting if you're longer together. I guess I'm assuming there's also more space for different kind of tensions, different kind of conversations. Oh, and also, yes, it was the one part, I mean, more connected to the topic, let's say, but we did not have time, of course, to tackle everything and to talk about everything. And one part is also to talk more about money, for example, and to have really more, even more uncomfortable conversations, I would say, which I think is, yeah, it's also maybe a little bit of the hosting edge, but it's like really also to bring more not only group sensing topics and structure topics, I guess, like I'm just curious also to take these learnings and implement it and try again. How would things go differently if I change things, if sessions would be in different time, if we used the board differently, and these kind of things. This is one thing to be really curious about implementing learnings, but then
Mm,
also more uncomfortable topics and maybe even doing it longer.
Mm, awesome. I love that. Yeah, I can see how they're sort of tied in. Like, if you do it longer, then more things tend to come up. Yeah, yeah. It's easy, and I think we had a minimum of 2 weeks. I think it's easy to think, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. I don't have to address this tension with someone. But if you're staying for
Mhm.
like 2 months with the same group, yeah, definitely more room for, okay, let's make an effort. Yeah, that's great. So maybe longer, and creating space for more tensions, or more to come up that was maybe unspoken. Yeah,
Mhm. Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Um, so that's looking forwards, and maybe, yeah, to how you would like to grow. If someone, my final question would be, if someone came to you who hasn't done this yet, um, and would be asking for your advice, and you could be their sort of like mentor, um, what would be maybe, like, let's say three tips or so that you would share with them based on your experiences this time?
Mhm. I think the first thing would be to ask them and prompt them to sit down and think about their own, on the one hand, their own intention and their why they want to do this.
Mm,
So thinking about, okay, why do you want to host these kind of container? What's your own expectations about it? And also, how would you like to learn, or what would you like to grow? So what are you going in with? Like, what's really what you want to go in with? And also thinking about, again, like the expectations that you're also going in with, and they might
mm,
influence your whole experience, and they might also help you shape this experience. So really having this moment of reflection, I think, is very important beforehand. Um, and then I guess also connecting to how you are always phrasing this ability and capacity of hosting, um, connecting it to the setup again. Do I want to do this alone? Would I like to have a team? What is my capacity as a host?
mm,
What would I need to feel comfortable as a host? Then also thinking about the own role and where the um, boundaries would be and how you would like to define it. Because I
mm,
feel like, again, thinking about the smorgasbord, even like what is a host? So it could be anything, and you could include anything and nothing. So really to think about what you would like to include, and then again also how to communicate it to the group.
mm,
Um, and then all of this would then, I guess, tie into all the logistics and decisions that this person would make, like what's important for the venue, let's say the location, the composition, um, the pricing, even the
mm,
organization, like how much do we want to take over? Is there a shopping needed because it's super rural, or do we want to have, you don't want this kind of organization, so let's better be in a city, and then but then this changes because then you maybe are not less so intimate because you might be dispersed because many things can be done in the city and everybody's doing their own thing. I don't know. So really
mm,
like connecting to the intention, hosting, and the capacity and expectations, and then thinking, how can I make the decisions for my pop-up and for my experience that it fits all of these.
mm. Gold. I love that. Tuning into your why, and then
Mhm.
design it with your own needs and expectations in mind as well. Yeah. Yeah. If I could summarize it in that way.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Beautiful. I don't have any specific questions anymore. Maybe we want to also wrap up soon because of the
Mhm.
time. But is there anything else that you'd want to share, Kathrin, to anyone who's listening in?
Mm. I think I would just like to say and encourage everyone to experiment, because I feel like that's also what the name, how the name is coming from, not a co-living, is like we don't want to be a certain thing. There's not like a box where how we're starting with, and sometimes it's just so um, there's so much pressure. Maybe there's so many things where you feel like, oh, I don't know how it's done, so I just better study first and I just learn about all these things, and you never really try. but I feel like just trying and experimenting just brings up so much experience, and it helps you so much to actually make further decisions, to grow, and to actually experience it. So it helped me a lot. So I just love to encourage everyone to experiment.
I couldn't agree more. We want to do it, go and try something. Beautiful. Thanks, Kathrin, so much. I really enjoyed this follow-up chat with you. And yeah, I think we said it on the last interview as well. If people want to get in touch with you, do you want to just repeat? Yeah, if people have
Mhm.
questions or want to find out more about what you're doing.
Mhm.
How can
Yes,
they
so
find
yeah,
you?
we can definitely for sure put my Instagram or LinkedIn in the show notes. And then now we also have a Substack where we just shared like the learning from the last experiment. And I think probably we're also going to share more, but yeah, so we can also put the link there if they want to read a little bit about it.
That's awesome. I'm excited to see that. Yeah. Cool. Thanks so much. All right. All the
Thank
best.
you. Thank you, Jocelyn.
Yeah. Pleasure. Bye, everyone.
Bye.